We travel the silent dark between worlds. Our ships are quiet places. They hum with the sound of life support. They smell of recycled air and cold metal. For generations, this was all humanity knew. The scent of nowhere, the smell of the long journey. But we carried a secret with us. We brought a memory from a world we barely remembered. We brought the scent of home. We arrived on strange new worlds. Worlds with skies of burnt orange or deep violet. We saw rivers of liquid methane. We saw mountains that floated in the air. Yet we never felt like pioneers. We were not conquerors. We were librarians. Our most precious cargo was not technology. It was not weapons or terraforming gear. It was the simple, undeniable scent of old paper and ink. In our cargo holds were the last libraries of Earth. Books bound in leather and cloth. Pages filled with the patient work of centuries. When we opened the sealed containers, the fragrance filled our ships. It smelled of vanilla and drying leaves. It smelled of carved wood and quiet afternoons. It was the scent of a peaceful world. It was the smell of humanity's soul. We built libraries that smelled like home. We built them on worlds that had never known a tree. We built them in the shadows of star-born giants. We brought the quiet rustle of turning pages to the void. We did this so we would never forget. We did this so others might learn. We brought our stories to the stars, and we waited to see who would come to read them. Our first true home beyond Earth was Xylos. It was a world bathed in the warm light of twin suns. Great forests of purple flora covered the continents. The air was clean and sweet. Our ship landed in a vast, grassy clearing. We were the first humans to set foot here. The ground felt solid and welcoming beneath our boots. A perfect place for a new beginning. We did not build skyscrapers or military outposts. We did not drill for resources or raise fortifications. Our first act was to build a library. We used wood we had carried from Earth, planks of oak and pine and cedar. Each piece was a priceless artifact, a fragment of a world lost to time and distance. We assembled the structure with our own hands. The building rose against the violet tree line. It was a simple design, warm and inviting. It had large windows to let in the amber light. Inside, we built shelves that reached for the ceiling. We unpacked our cargo with gentle reverence. We placed each book in its new home. History texts sat beside poetry. Star science manuals rested next to children's stories. Some said building a library first was impractical. We just thought it was the most practical thing in the universe. When it was finished, we opened the doors. The scent of old earthwood and paper drifted out. It mixed with the alien air of Xylos. It was a declaration. It said, "We are not here to take. We are here to share." Our library stood as a silent invitation, a bastion of knowledge under alien suns. We were not alone for long. They came from the deep woods, the silent giants of Xylos, the Zealands. They were tall and slender beings. Their skin was like the bark of silver trees. Their limbs were long and graceful. They moved without a sound. They seemed more like the forest than creatures within it. We watched them from the library windows. They did not approach our starship. Its metal bulk and humming engines held no interest for them. They ignored our scientific sensor arrays. They paid no mind to our shuttles. All of their attention was focused on the wooden building. They stood at the edge of the clearing. They watched us carry books inside. Their large, dark eyes held a deep and patient curiosity. For weeks, they simply observed. A dozen or more would appear at dawn. They would stand motionless for hours. They watched the twin suns track across the sky. Then they would melt back into the purple forest at dusk. We made no move to approach them. We understood this was a delicate moment. It was a test of sorts. They were not studying our power. They were studying our purpose. We saw them as silent sentinels, guardians of this world. We knew they were deciding what to make of us. Were we a threat? Or were we something new? They seemed fascinated by our paper treasures. They were curious about the small, square things we handled with such care. We knew we had to bridge the silence. We had to show them what a book truly was. We decided to make an offering, a gesture of peaceful intent. We would not offer them technology. We would not try to impress them with our tools. We would offer them what we valued most. We would give them a story. Our council debated for days. Which book could possibly speak for all of humanity? A complex novel? A book of laws? A scientific text? In the end, the choice was simple. We chose a children's book. It had very few words. Its pages were filled with beautiful, simple pictures. It told the story of a seed. It showed the seed growing into a great tree. The tree gave shelter to small animals. It dropped its own seeds, and a forest was born. The story was universal: creation, life, community. Our captain, a woman named Eva, walked out alone. She moved into the center of the clearing. She walked toward a large, flat stone the Zilans sometimes gathered near. It was their unofficial altar. She placed the single book upon the stone. She opened it to the first page. Then she bowed her head slightly. She walked back to our library without looking back. An offering of words was made. The clearing was still for a long time. The twin suns began their slow descent. The purple forests grew dark with shadows. Just when we thought they would not come, one of them moved. A single Xylan stepped out from the trees. It moved with impossible grace to the stone altar. It looked down at the book for a very long time. Then, with a delicate, three-fingered hand, it picked it up. The sun set. The Xylans did not return that night. The book was gone. We waited. We did not know if we had succeeded or failed. Had we offered a gift or an insult? The next morning, we saw something on the stone. It was not our book. It was something else entirely. Something left for us. A gift had been returned. Captain Ava went out to retrieve it. She brought it inside the library. She placed it on a large oak table. It was a crystal. It was about the size of a human heart. It was perfectly clear, but seemed to hold a soft light within it. It pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic glow. When we touched it, we could feel a faint vibration. A low musical hum resonated through our fingers. We scanned it with our instruments. It was not a piece of technology. It had no power source we could detect. It had no circuitry. It was a naturally formed lattice, but a perfect one. The pulsing light seemed to shift and change. Patterns swirled inside its crystalline depths. It was beautiful. It was mysterious. It was clearly a message. They had taken our story. Now they had given us one of theirs. We gathered our best minds, our linguists, our xenobiologists, our physicists. They studied the luminous crystal day and night. The light patterns were complex. They were not random. They repeated in long, intricate loops. The humming sound also changed. Its pitch and tone shifted in time with the light. We knew it was a language. We just had to learn the grammar of light. It was a daunting task. We had nothing to compare it to. No shared context. No Rosetta Stone for a song of light. We almost gave up a dozen times. Some argued it was just a pretty rock. They said we were seeing patterns where none existed. They said we should have offered them a power cell instead of a picture book. They were almost right, but not quite. We were listening to the crystal's hum. We ran it through our translation matrix. We tried to find meaning in the frequencies. The breakthrough came from a musicologist. She noticed the hum was not one sound. It was thousands of layered tones, a chorus of voices woven into a single chord. She isolated one of the tones. She converted it into a visual waveform. Then she compared that wave to the light pulses. It was a perfect match. The light and sound were two parts of the same message. They were the words and the music of a single song. Suddenly, we had a key. We could begin to translate their crystal songs. We learned their history was deeper than our own. It was a tale that stretched back for millennia, a story filled with great triumphs and terrible sorrow. They had seen empires rise and fall in the stars. They had survived a cataclysm that nearly broke their world. They were a people of memory. Their entire history, their art, their philosophy, it was all stored in these crystals. Each one was a library. Each one was a life story. They had given us their soul. They trusted us with their deepest truths. It was a bond forged not in treaties. It was a bond forged in shared stories. We had found a true home and true friends. But peace in our galaxy is a fragile thing. A shadow was coming. It arrived without warning. A rip in the fabric of space. A fleet of ships emerged from the void. They were not like ours. Our ships were built for discovery. They were elegant and clean. These new ships were brutal. They were jagged wedges of dark metal. They were covered in weapon emplacements. They bled a kind of cold, predatory energy. This was the Krog Ascendancy. They were a name we knew from distant reports, a conquering empire that expanded like a virus. They were collectors of technology. They would strip a system of its resources. They would take any useful tech and enslave its people. They saw the galaxy as a treasure chest to be plundered. They had no interest in art or culture. They had no time for stories. Their fleet blotted out the twin suns of Xylos. The sky turned dark. A cold shadow fell over our library. The Krog ships took up orbit. They formed a perfect, menacing ring around the planet. We counted over 30 warships. We had one science vessel. We were outmatched. We were outgunned. We knew a demand was coming, and we knew we would not be able to meet it. The Xylons felt the change immediately. They retreated into the deepest parts of their purple forests. A silence fell over the world. It was the silence of fear, the silence of a world holding its breath. We stood by the library windows. We watched the dark shapes hanging in our sky. We had brought the scent of home to this world. Now we had brought a monster to its door. The communication channel crackled to life. A face appeared on our main view screen. It was a Krog. His features were sharp and severe. His skin was the color of stone. He had cold black eyes that showed no emotion. He wore the dark, armored uniform of a commander. A jagged scar ran down one side of his face. His name was Vrax. His voice was like grinding rock. He did not offer greetings. He did not ask who we were. His first words were a demand. You will surrender your starship. You will surrender its drive core. You will transfer all technical schematics. You do this now, or we will sterilize this planet. There was no room for negotiation in his tone. It was the flat final sound of an executioner. He looked around our bridge on his screen. His eyes dismissed us as insignificant. Then his gaze fell upon a monitor showing the library. A look of contempt crossed his face. You built that? A structure of dead wood. You fill it with pressed plant matter? He gave a short, harsh laugh. What a waste of resources. That building will be the first to burn. We knew we had no chance in a fight. Our ship was a research vessel. We had light shielding and no weapons. To resist would be suicide. But to surrender our ship, our home, was unthinkable. It would mean stranding ourselves here. It would mean giving these monsters the keys to travel faster. They could spread their shadow even further. Our Captain Ava responded. Her voice was calm. She did not show fear. Commander Vrax, we are a peaceful expedition. We have no desire for conflict. She paused. Your terms are not acceptable. But we would like to make a counteroffer. The Krog commander raised a skeptical eyebrow. He was probably expecting us to beg. He certainly wasn't expecting what came next. Our refusal was quiet. It was not a roar of defiance. It was a simple, unshakable statement of who we were. Captain Ava looked directly at the commander. We will not give you our technology. It is not our way to trade tools of creation for an assurance of destruction. We do not believe in that kind of exchange. The bridge of our ship was silent. We could hear the faint hum of the Krog commander's ship over the comm. But we will offer you a gift, she continued. We offer you what we value most. We will build a library for you. We will fill it with our stories. We will share our history, our art, our knowledge. We offer this freely. It is a greater treasure than any star drive. It was an absurd offer. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a poem. We were offering a book to a man holding a gun. Commander Vrax stared at her for a long moment. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was a cruel, mocking roar that echoed through our bridge. A library? You offer me dead trees and ink? My ships can crack planets. My soldiers have conquered 100 worlds. You offer me children's stories? He leaned in close to his screen. His cold eyes narrowed. You have 1 hour to comply, or this world becomes dust. Your library will be its tombstone. The channel went dead. 1 hour. 60 minutes until our extinction. The mood on the bridge was grim. We had made our stand. We had stayed true to our principles. It felt like a small, hollow victory. We prepared for the end. We sent a final data burst toward home. A message in a bottle thrown into the star-born ocean. It contained everything we had learned from the Xylan crystal. It was our last act as librarians. And then, something changed. The ground began to vibrate. A low hum filled the air. It was not coming from the Krog ships. It was coming from the forest. We looked out the windows of our library. They were coming. The Xylans. They were emerging from the purple woods. Not by the dozen, by the thousand. A silent, silver tide of beings. They moved with a shared purpose. They did not look at us. They did not look at our ship. They walked past the library. They filled the great clearing. They formed a living wall. They stood between our small wooden building and the fleet in the sky. Their faces were calm. Their tall, slender bodies were unbowed. The silent giants had made their choice. They would not let our story, or theirs, be extinguished. They were making a stand. The hour was almost up. The Krog warships began to glow. Their weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. They were preparing to fire. Down on the surface, the Xylans did not flinch. They simply raised their hands. In each hand was a luminous crystal. Thousands of them. The clearing began to glow with a soft, internal light, a quiet defiance against the gathering dark. Then they acted. Together, as one. They projected the light from their crystals upward. Thousands of beams of soft light shot into the sky. They merged into a single, massive wave of energy. It was not a weapon. It was not a shield of force. It was a broadcast, a shield of shared knowledge, the songs of their people, the history of their world. It washed over the Krog fleet. On board the Krog command ship, alarms blared. "Intrusion detected," a technician yelled. "Massive data flood on all channels." Commander Vrax scowled. "Block it." "What is it?" The technician looked confused. "It's not code, sir. It's art, music, stories. It's bypassing all our firewalls. It's flooding the comms. The entire Krog fleet was being bombarded, not with plasma or missiles, but with memories. The stories of the Xylons filled every screen, every speaker, every heads-up display. The Krog soldiers saw images of great cities rising. They heard songs of peace under twin suns. They witnessed the sorrow of the great cataclysm. They felt the resilience of a people who refused to be broken. They were drowning in the history of a world they were about to destroy. It was an attack on their certainty, a weapon against their hate. Commander Vrax roared in frustration. "Cut all power to comms. I want silence." But it was too late. The broadcast shifted. It was no longer just the story of the Xylans. Our own data burst, our final message, had been woven into it. The Xylans had amplified our history alongside their own. Now the Krog heard human stories. They heard Shakespeare and saw the works of Da Vinci. They heard Mozart's Requiem. And then, something impossible happened. The broadcast changed again. The Xylan crystals had resonated with the Krog systems. They had found something buried deep in their ship's archives. Old data, forgotten files, cultural records deleted generations ago by their own leaders. The broadcast began projecting the Krog's own lost history, a history they had been taught to forget. Vrax froze. On his main screen, he saw not Xylans or humans. He saw his own ancestors. But they were not warriors. They were builders. They were poets. They created beautiful starborn structures. They wrote music that mapped the orbits of galaxies. He heard lullabies his grandmother had whispered to him. Stories of a time before the ascendancy. A time before conquest was the only truth they knew. He saw his people as they once were, full of hope and wonder. He saw the moment their philosophy had shifted, the moment they chose power over wisdom, the moment they began conquering worlds instead of understanding them. He watched his people trade their soul for an empire. He saw it all through the eyes of strangers, through the light of a crystal from a world he was about to burn. The broadcast was showing him everything he had lost, everything his people had destroyed in themselves. The bridge of his warship was silent. The weapons officer looked at Vrax, waiting for the command to fire. But Vrax did not speak. He just watched the images of his forgotten past. He listened to the songs of his ancestors. He was not just a commander anymore. He was the descendant of poets. He was the child of builders. A single tear traced a path through the grime on his face. He lowered his head. He was not defeated. He was found. The broadcast ended. The thousands of light beams from the surface faded. Silence returned. A profound and heavy silence filled the space between the planet and the fleet. The twin suns of Xylos cast their amber light on the dark Krog ships. Their weapon ports were still open. Their energy signatures were still at maximum. A single word from Vrax could end it all. We waited. The Xylans waited. The entire world held its breath. We had offered them a story. The Xylans had forced them to listen. But the choice was still his. Would he cling to the dark path of the ascendancy? Or would he acknowledge the truth he had been shown? On our view screen, we saw the lead Krog ship. It was a terrifying sight. A planet killer waiting for its command. Then, one by one, the glowing weapon ports began to close. The menacing energy signatures faded. The warships powered down their primary systems. It was a universal sign, a stand down, an unexpected ceasefire. Vrax opened a channel. His face appeared on our screen again. He looked different. The harsh certainty was gone from his eyes. The scar on his face seemed less like a mark of rage and more like a map of sorrow. His voice was quiet. It had lost its gravelly edge. "We request permission to speak." Captain Eva nodded slowly. "Permission granted, Commander." Vrax took a deep breath. "The stories, the songs, they were our own. Where did you find them?" Eva smiled a small, gentle smile. "We didn't find them. The Xylans did. They found them inside you." A new kind of negotiation was about to begin. The talks were strange. The Krog did not ask for our star drive. We did not demand their withdrawal. We did not discuss territory or treaties. We talked about memory. We talked about history. Vrax told us his people had systematically erased their own past. They believed it made them weak. It was a liability. They had burned their own libraries. They had destroyed their own art. They chose to be a people with no history, only a future of conquest. Now he knew it was a lie. He knew his people were more than just warriors. The glimpse of their past had ignited a hunger in him, a need to know more. He asked for our help. He did not want our technology. He wanted our expertise. He asked us to teach him how to be a librarian. He wanted to recover the memories his people had tried so hard to erase. So we helped them. We welcomed Krog engineers and scholars into our library on Xylos. The Xylans joined us. Together, the three species began a new project. We did not build a weapon. We did not design a new ship. We designed a library. We helped them build an archive on their warship. We converted a massive cargo bay. We took out missile racks and put in shelves. It was a slow process. The Krog had to relearn what a book was. They had to understand the value of a single poem. The Xylans shared the secrets of their crystal archives. They taught the Krog how to find the echoes of memory in their own machines. The Krog began a great archaeological dig into their own past. They searched for fragmented data, for deleted files, for the ghosts of forgotten songs. They were building their own library, filled with their own recovered memories. The day the Krog fleet left was very different from the day they arrived. They did not rip a hole in space. They departed slowly, respectfully. Commander Vrax sent us one last message. He was standing in the new library on his ship. Behind him were shelves filled with data crystals and newly printed books. He looked at peace. "Thank you," he said. "You have given us back our soul." His fleet turned and vanished into the dark. They left not as conquerors. They left as archivists on the hunt for their own story. We never fired a single shot. We never raised a single shield. We faced an empire that could shatter worlds, and we defeated it with a picture book and a quiet offer. The library on Xylos still stands. It is larger now. It has a wing dedicated to the crystal songs of the Xylans. It has another filled with the recovered histories of the Krog. Our own books are there, linking them all together. Our mission continued. We traveled to other worlds. We met other species. And everywhere we went, we built a library. We learned that every being in the universe has a story worth telling. We found that the fastest way to peace is not a weapon. It is a shared memory, a common tale. Humanity did not build an empire of warships and colonies. We built an empire of ink and understanding. Our legacy was not carved in stone or forged in fire. It was written on a million worlds in a million different languages. And it always smelled a little bit like home.